Thank you all for being here this evening. I'd like to welcome those of you who signed up to speak tonight before the Board of Trustees, and thank you for your interest in Greenville County Schools and our budget process. As each speaker's name is called, he or she should proceed to the podium at the end of the board's desk where there is a microphone and a light system. Each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes, and I understand that we have 11 speakers this evening. So our time generally says 30 minutes, but without objection from the board, we're going to allow that extra speaker to go in there so that we don't have to cut everybody's time to 2 minutes. So you will be allowed the full 3 minutes to speak tonight. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attacks aimed at students or staff members will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in discussion with the speakers or respond to comments at this meeting. So thank you very much, and we will get into allow our speakers to start. The first person on our list tonight is Susanna Saravia.
Hi, good evening. My name is Susana Sarabia, and I want you to please vote no on the $862 million budget proposal. We have a national tax increase with no ceiling limit. We have a state tax increase, now a proposed local tax increase of 23%, and school budget of over $862 million. We have many taxpayers on fixed income. They will not able to come up with an increase. Plus, God forbid, if we have a recession, no businesses will be able to stand. They will be forced to live in the streets. Please look at Los Angeles and San Francisco. I moved from that area. Not only the homeless population is out of control, but businesses are moving out. Crime is out of control and drug is out of control. The Bible tells us in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. That is the principle of sowing and reaping. You do good, you harvest a good life. You do evil, you harvest destruction, death, and misery. Please, councilmen, request for an audit that show exactly where their money is going and really advocate for the children. We don't need the schools to become mental clinics. We don't need a CDC or Prismas control our children medically or mentally. During the pandemic, you have medical clinics come to schoolyards and jab students. My friend has a 16-year-old niece that was jabbed and now she needs a heart pacemaker. This girl used to compete in swim meets. Do you know where her career and future went? Down the drain. Don't teach students to accept lies about themselves. You're not being discriminatory, but you're leading to a population reduction. I ask you to think how your decisions will affect all of us. All these years, your budgets were in the millions and you seem not to get things right. And now if you pass the proposal, you will be helping destroy the middle class. Most of you are not getting any younger either. If you help this corrupt US administration steal from their people, tomorrow they will wipe your bank accounts too. This is evil. May you turn to God and give your heart to Him. May the Lord give you wisdom and understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sarajevo. Our next speaker is David Kopp.
Push down and talk. Thank you. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm speaking for this board to say no to this budget increase, and my reasons are pretty quite simple. I went to the website and I looked at your 2022 budget, and in it, on the second page, it talks about the changes in the net position. And it says right here, overall, the school district net position increased in 2022 as revenue exceeded expenses, and including depreciation of $50 million by $87 million. Total revenue increased by $104.6 million from 2021. So I have 6 points to make. The second point also comes from your website. And on that website from 2015 to 2022, there was no $100 million budget increases. Matter of fact, there wasn't no $50 million budget increases. This seems to be quite exorbitant. So number three, the point I want to make is that taxes are rising everywhere. And the county taxes are rising like 23%. City taxes are rising. I don't know how, I don't live in the city, but I live in the county, and they're going to vote to raise it 23%. And heaven knows what the government, the state's going to do, or the federal government's going to do. But I know what they did in the Netherlands. I was there 2 months ago in April, and I went there for the first time with my wife. She has a huge family, and they all live in these small little apartments. Their taxes are 21% sales tax. Their road taxes are very regressive. Nobody drove a decent sized car. And not one full size semi truck did I see on the road. They all had the flat front end. They also talked about the 23% income tax. But we know where this is going to go here. It didn't happen overnight over there, but it seems to be happening overnight over here with all these taxes that's going on. And now, the fourth point I want to make is the salaries. I looked at from the Greenville Online at the salaries of the Greenville superintendent. He makes over $283,000 last year. Okay, I don't know if he gets a car and other benefits included with that, but that was on Greenville News Online. That paper also discussed how he went from in the previous 5 years, went from about 4 employees making over $150,000 to 13 people making over $150,000. Now, I don't know how many people after this budget passes would be making over $150,000. It seems like we've forgotten that the government works for us and that we don't work for the government. Number 6 is Greenville is growing.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Your 3 minutes are up.
Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Julian.
There you go. Can you hear me all right? All right, all right. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much here, but I just want to state out a cause and effect that's happened to me as a business owner, as a builder, developer, and rental manager of my own units. Overall tax increases and I'll just give example of an average of the 10s that were, the assessments increased drastically. The overall tax increases were 3.5 times of an average of my last 10 units that went up this year. Now, next round, I'll probably get another 10 units. They're going to be increasing. Those tax increases went from $1,200 to $4,200, okay, for each unit. That comes out about $3,000 per year and about a $250 per month cost to each one of my tenants. Okay, I lost 2 of my tenants because of that. Now, when you multiply that about 10 units over a period of time, 5 years, that's about 100,000. 10 years, it's about 200,000. Okay, and that's 10 units. Next round is probably going to be double that, 200,000 to 400,000. Now, of that, the school board taxes on the typical unit went from $1,000 to $2,000. They doubled, okay? And that's where, on those typical 10 units, again, 5 years, it's 100,000, 10 years is 200,000. This is having a basic cause and effect that detrimental to my tenants and also my business at hand. The school board makes 53% of a much higher number now with all the new assessments. And a lot of these new assessments, because of the newer houses coming in, they're extremely expensive, so therefore we're getting caught up into this. Same thing happened in Florida. Now, Florida came back and they put some caps on it and helped out, but I saw a lot of small businesses in a small apartment complexes. Mom and pop gets totally slaughtered back then. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, as the assessments are increasing and the population moves in, okay, even if you decrease your percentages or your millage, your the total amount of dollars are going to be increasing over a period of time. Now, another point I want to make is my tenants. Out of all my tenants I have, out of 20 units, I only have one tenant that has any children. And they happen to be twins. You know, God bless them, they got twins, that's great. But overall, we don't have that many children, at least what I'm seeing in my demographic coming in, that are basically paying a lot of this money because I have to increase my rents to cover these tax increases. So again, the summary is, as more people are moving in, the assessments are like double, tripling, quadrupling in some of the cases. I got units that went from 40,000 to 200,000 assessment fees. So
Thank you.
The cause and effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mister. Our next speaker is Edmund Williams.
Good evening. My name is Brent Williams with United Community Bank. And first, I want to thank you all for your service to Greenville County and also for all of our educators and other staff in attendance on successful completion of another school year. I'm here to support the proposed millage increase both as a parent of 3 Greenville County school students and as a representative of the more than 480 employees in the upstate of South Carolina from United Community Bank. In the past couple of years, United has made the decision to relocate our headquarters from Georgia to Greenville, South Carolina. You may have noticed our new headquarters building being built right down the street from here. Why? Well, in the past, we knew that we would need to attract top talent that we need to grow and serve our customers in the future. One of our measures of success as an organization is being a great place to work for great people. We understand the importance of investing in people so that they can use their skills to improve the financial health and well-being of our customers and the communities that we serve. It's not too dissimilar from this investment that we're being asked to make in our educators. Pay raises, additional mentoring and coaching for new teachers. All of these investments are in people, so that our people, because we know that they are critical if we're going to continue to hold a competitive advantage in an increasingly tight marketplace. As a banker, I know a thing or two about smart investments, so I have full confidence that this one will yield powerful benefits, not just for our students and the educators that serve them, but for the entire Greenville community that benefits from our extraordinary public education system. Thank you for supporting the millage increase and for your service to Greenville and to Greenville County Schools.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Our next speaker is Kathleen Griffith.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. First of all, has anybody noticed prices have gone up on just about everything? So I pray for the families that are struggling right now. I mean, there are families that are having a really hard time filling their gas tanks up and feeding their families. And so I see an increased burden on those families as something that we want to avoid. We have billions of dollars coming into the education system. I mean, federal money, state money. The state sets the salaries, totally understand that. We want to compensate them. We want to keep them happy. We want to retain them. Salaries, from what I'm understanding, of course, that's important, but there's also other issues that are affecting teachers today. Support from their administrators. There's lots of other things. I don't want to get into that. I want to focus on the taxes, okay? We currently pay 68 to 70% in our property taxes within the county today. Outside of that, I do know that the state does set the salaries and then the county decides what and how to dole out that money, okay? I do see with this incoming recession and inflation that hasn't been seen in our nation in like 40 years, this is really an important time for us to consider where we can sharpen our pencils and cut out the fat. I know plenty of million-dollar projects that I worked on. Folks have come back to me and said, you need to sharpen the pencil. Where can we take things away? What do we need to cut that's not going to affect what we're delivering, in this case, investing in our children? So I'm just asking that we do that. As what was mentioned earlier, we have increased in growth. We've had double growth here in the county with recent even property value in reassessments. So there, right there was a 15% increase in revenues coming in. So with this double-digit growth, where's that money going? How is that money being utilized? I think that's important. So I just think hearing that this increase is coming at this time is deeply concerning for me. And I just ask that you consider and pray before you vote for this, for the families that will be impacted by this. And then just one more thing, businesses that are impacted by this Act 388, those taxes just get passed through the consumers. So those that want to go eat out at restaurants or get their car fixed, these are going to affect everybody. Those taxes just get passed through. It's not like, oh, a business is going to be impacted and you're fine. It doesn't work like that. So anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Griffith. Our next speaker is Jeff Mack.
Good evening. I would encourage a no vote on this. And Thomas Sowell said, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And it's not that anything is dishonest with any of the numbers given, because it wasn't. It just doesn't tell the full story. The whole story and the devil is in the details. So as far as line items, we've never seen any line items. I have a hard time believing that out of $862 million as a budget, that we can't cut 13 million bucks out of that. I don't think anyone here has ever had all the line item details. If it is, then we can see them, but I don't know where those are at. But we got the 30,000 foot view thing on the budget, but very little details as far as how those numbers are comprised. And so I'm a business owner, and like it was set up here, I'm not opposed to anything. In fact, teacher salaries are important, but it's how we get there is the important thing. And raising taxes, that's what the entire liberal agenda tries to do, is raise taxes every time there is something we need. I think we do more with less, just like every family does when they're trying to, make ends meet. Do more with less. That's what we should do, instead of just tacking on taxes. 5 years from now, we'll be up 30%, 40% more in taxes. Who knows? County and city are both raising taxes. It's too much for the regular family to endure over time. There is no question about that. And so we're looking at a Greenville County. Don't know if it'll pass, hopefully not, but a 23% tax increase. And so what'll be next? We're going to keep having to battle tax increases. How about a tax decrease? Find a way to do that. Dig into the details and find out how to decrease taxes instead of just tacking it on. Combine positions, combine things. I'm sure there's positions that aren't needed. There's jobs out there. People can go find different jobs if it doesn't fit the thing. If we can combine stuff and create one salary instead of two or three, I think we need to do that. We do that in our company. And I think the school and all the government institutions need to run the same way. And so sharpen our pencils, vote no for this tax increase. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Magg. Our next speaker is Caitlin Scott.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Scott. I'm here tonight with a group of teachers from all across our district. And in fact, if you're in my group tonight, would you please stand up just so we can see who you are? several teachers here tonight. Thank you. So my colleagues and I are here tonight just to show our gratitude and our support for the budget as it's being proposed tonight. It's written to include pay raises for all employees. We know that you already know how severely the teacher shortage is affecting our students and our entire community, and how long-term that impact is. And it's continuing to get worse, and we know that you know that as well. It's becoming cyclical. Those teachers like us who are staying are being so negatively affected that the burnout rates are continuing to grow as we carry the weight of those who are leaving. We really appreciate the district administration's prioritization and commitment to valuing our teachers and staff, and approving this budget would just be a very small action with really high leverage, and it would go a really long way for our teachers and our support staff to feel supported and invested in by our community. People stay where they feel valued, and the more staff that we can get to stay, the more high quality education we can provide for our entire community. We understand that proposing a small tax increase is never ideal. We appreciate, though, your recognition of the fact that the long-term impacts of this teacher shortage just far outweigh any impact of, on average, I saw a figure, it works out to about 15 cents per vehicle as far as the property tax works out. We recognize these decisions are always complex and never easy, and we appreciate your consistent commitment to the things that are just most important. Thank you again in advance for approving this budget and valuing the employees who work so hard across this district to serve our students. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Our next speaker is Lindsay Batavia.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Batavia. Thank you so much for your service and all that you do for the children of Greenville County. I am the parent of a rising 6th and 8th grader at Hughes Academy. I am currently the PTSA president at Hughes Academy. I have a few more weeks left. And during 2020, while I was the president of Augustus Circle Elementary, the PTA president, I answer the call to become a substitute teacher. As you all know, there was a critical shortage of substitute teachers. And thank you for the pay raise last year, because that definitely did encourage me to substitute teach more. So whether I am every day I'm in the school, whether it's a volunteer or whether I'm as a sub, and I've got to say, being a teacher is the hardest job that there is. Our teachers are not just teaching, they are mentoring, they are doing so many things for society and for the future. And we are not going to have a society of future leaders if we do not educate these children. Last summer, it was brought to my attention by our principal at Hughes how many teacher shortages or how many teacher vacancies we had at that school. And this year, at the beginning of the year, we were having to combine classes and have way more than what was safe in one classroom for one teacher, and the teacher didn't make any more money. So that is just going to continue to happen. I know firsthand of how many teachers are burned out. They can go to get another job, sometimes just even tutoring, and make just the same amount of money, but with a lot less stress. If we do not stay competitive with our pricing, we're not going to attract the teachers to our county that are going to be the future business leaders and be in the workplace for tomorrow. So I thank all of you for your support and all of you for everything you do, and I just hope that you will take vote to pass this, and so that we can stay competitive and we can educate the future leaders of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. David Wood.
Hi everyone, I'm David Wood, and I have the privilege of having 3 children in the Greenville County school system. We have a rising 1st grader, a 7th grader, and a 10th grader, so we have experience with all developmental stages, you might say. I try my best to be an advocate for everyone. I was a broken kid who benefited from teachers who cared. In particular, my kindergarten teacher, Miss Callahan, and I exchanged Christmas cards every year until she died, which was just last year. Having seen the impact that a teacher could make, I wanted to make sure that our teachers know that they are appreciated and supported. One way that we can do that is with pay and resources. The budget looks overall positive to me. As a taxpayer and parent, I support the increase to make sure that our students, teachers, nurses, and other employees are well taken care of. As you can tell by my shirt, I love public schools. Working for a school system or being on a school board does not mean that you'll have an easy job, but I do believe it's rewarding, but especially when we can work together and when people feel valued. I hope as a community that we can find ways to continue to be kind to those that we entrust with their children. So as I close today, my message is simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wood. Our next speaker is Billy Massey.
Thank you very much. And thanks again to the board for allowing us to discuss our feelings on this current proposed budget this year. The question is, how much can the school district tighten its belt? When it comes to tax increases, we have to tighten our belt as well. I represent friends and neighbors in Simpsonville area. I've lived here all my life. I see all the growth. We've driven around all over the outside, all around the county line, and we see this growth everywhere it used to be. I grew up here, so I remember there were a lot of woods and a lot of open ground, but it's becoming less and less that way. And of course, but all the growth of families moving in from the south, in my opinion and opinion of many others, should be bringing in revenue. I don't know what the study is on that. Should be bringing in a lot more revenue than we've had in the last 3 years. As the growth has been exploding here. So I've not seen anything what the increase is of people coming in and paying into the schools like they should, their taxes. All the growth from families moving from the south should be helping in that area with our school budget. The county is wanting to, of course, this is a tough time for everybody. The county's wanting to increase their budget, as you know, as we talked about, 23%. And it's like $53 million, I think you guys were talking about, as far as the school district budget. And just this weekend, the Saudis announced that they were going to decrease oil production to the United States. And I'm just adding on everything that there's more taxes that we have to pay other than school tax, which I believe in the school system. I came through public schools, so did my children, and so I'm not against taxes for the school, but people are struggling right now to get by. And again, respectfully, I plead to you to vote no on this vote. Tighten your belt like we have to, and remember that votes has consequences in your future as a school board member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Our next speaker is Ann Kelsey Ziebert.
Hello, my name is Ann Kelsey Ziebert. Today I finished my 19th year as an educator in South Carolina and my 13th in Greenville County. I'm here to explain my support for an increase in salary for teachers and staff. Our public schools are a great asset to our community, not just for the families with a student or students enrolled in public school, but all members of our community. Public schools help to educate students to be productive members of society, educated, well-informed individuals who will be able to give back as citizens, future parents, employees in so many ways. Because we care about the health of our community, public schools need to be supported and valued by all residents of Greenville County. At the state level, Act 388, passed in 2006 by the General Assembly, eliminated property owners' taxes on their primary residence for school operations. Many in our community may not know this. It is reasonable to ask members of our community to help fund school operations because of all the benefits quality public schools provide. Teachers play the most vital role in the success of our schools and our student learning. For that reason, we as a school district and the community at large need to do all we can to support teachers and keep them in the profession. I have seen firsthand the number of teachers who leave the profession simply because they don't make enough money to take care of their family or because they cannot afford to live in the community where they teach. Not every teacher leaves the profession because of salary concerns, but many do. I want to applaud and offer my sincere gratitude to the school district leadership and members of the school board for prioritizing the increase of teacher salaries. An increase in teacher salaries to a more competitive and fair level of compensation is needed to help keep more quality educators in Greenville County classrooms. Passionate, talented educators are of great importance to our students, their families, and to helping to bolster our community at large. I'm grateful for your support for the budget and for your service to our district and our whole community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Kelsey Ziebert. Thank you. Thank you. And we have finished right on time. What I would like to do, we're going to adjourn the public speaking portion. That was our last speaker. And I am going to call to order our budget meeting. But before I do that, I would like to invite everyone in the room, whether you spoke, I think we're all on team public education, whether you spoke for or against the millage increase. So I would love to invite each and every one of you to, especially the ones that spoke, to please stay. We have a presentation that I think will be very informative on the process of our budget and some other items that I found as I talked to my constituents over the weekend. That was kind of a spoiler, what our last speaker said, but many were just stunned to find out that it was not on their homes. It was not, the tax was not on owner-occupied homes, and it's not a lack of knowing. It's just that South Carolina's public education funding system is very complicated, and a lot of people, especially retired people or people with young families that have just relocated to Greenville because of the wonderful lifestyle that we enjoy here in Greenville, they're just not aware of all of this information. So I'll invite you to stay and enjoy our presentation. Sorry, there's not popcorn, but I'm going to call this meeting to order for our budget process and turn it over to Dr. Royster. And thank you for each of you that came to speak tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Ms. Pfister's pulling up the presentation now. First, we want to talk just a little bit about return on investment. Every dime that's spent on public education in this community is an investment in the community's near and long-term future. Just looking at most current return on investment. In 21-22, our students earned 25,000 potential college credits via advanced placement or dual credit courses. That's a 56% increase from 16-17. The value of those hours of credit is $10.5 million at South Carolina public four-year colleges, i.e. that's the amount of tuition those same families would pay that child taking that course in one of the public institutions in our state. During the 21-22 school year, our students earned over 8,745 industry certifications. That was a 41% increase from the previous year and a 1,355% increase since 16-17. These certifications position those students to go directly into the workforce at higher paying jobs, position them to take advanced training in those same areas for even greater compensation in those jobs. Last year, our senior class earned $183 million in scholarship offers. Every reason to believe that those first three bullet points will increase again this year. We just do not yet know by what amount. We don't get those numbers until later in the summer, going into the fall. Greenville County Schools, with an overall A- grade, is rated among the top 16% of schools nationwide. The only source for that nationwide is niche.com. There's a lot of reference made tonight about people moving into this community. That's where a lot of people go to get their information about schools, individual schools, and about school districts. And it does a comparison one-to-one for school systems and schools throughout the country. Currently, our district ranks number 3 in minimum teacher pay, number 3 in average teacher pay, and number 2 in most experienced teacher pay. Over the last 10 years, Greenville County Schools has increased from number 31 to number 3 in teacher average pay compared to other South Carolina school districts. That is the single most impactful item over which we have control for ensuring that we have quality teachers in the classroom, which has the greatest impact on student attainment and achievement. Those things you just heard me talk about are the direct result of having quality teachers in the classroom every day, led by quality principals and leadership in the schools, supported by quality individuals throughout the organization. Our current teacher turnover rate, that's a real concern all over this country, is 20% below the state's average for teacher turnover. We believe that it is in large part due to the salaries that we're able to pay teachers, to attract and retain those teachers, and the support they receive in their classrooms. You see in the budget that we're presenting as a recommendation from the administration, a continuation of that. We didn't go from number 31 to number 3 overnight. We went by taking incremental steps with extremely conservative recommendations for increased millage throughout the course of that time frame, including years where no millage increase was requested. In this year, we propose a step. Everybody, I think most people are familiar with the teachers are paid based on a step related to their year's experience. The steps are not equal. They vary in amount from 0.5% to over 3%. We're recommending a step and $2,600 to each cell of the teacher salary schedule. That results in a pay raise for individual teachers, because those steps vary in height, between 3.65% and 7.54%. The average is around 5%, well below the rate of inflation. Non-teacher pay schedules, many of those employees are also on a step scale. It doesn't have as many steps as teacher pay, but on a step schedule, 3.5 to 7.1%. The majority of those employees, a 3.5% raise. The rate of inflation upon which the budget's based is 8%. That's the amount that the state has communicated to us of inflation that applies to school districts for this year. They send that to each school district in the state, along with a calculation for the amount that you should raise millage to meet inflation and population growth. 8% is the inflation rate in that calculation for this year. Our recommendation carefully balances the need to remain competitive for quality personnel, realizing that all 11,000 of our employees are experiencing the effects of inflation, with the recognition that that inflation also impacts our taxpayers. Our recommended increase reflects only a 6.4% increase in local taxes. And in a minute, we'll get to what you pay taxes on and what you don't pay taxes on. However, due to the tax structure for schools in South Carolina, the vast majority of taxpayers in our district will pay even less of an increase than 6.4%. Where do we currently spend our money? We heard some comments that referenced that earlier. We spend the majority of it on salaries and benefits for employees. FY23, $730.6 million. All other expenditures, $65.476 million. The people that funds, there's a reason for the varying sizes. That largest person there represents teachers and aides. The one to the left, $466.5 million. Teachers and classroom aides. Instructional support, $82.1 million. All that first group of people, the first 5 people represented there are school-based personnel. They're the people you see when you walk in a school on a daily basis. In that category, there's 675 professional employees, exempt employees, and 133 hourly employees, instructional support. School level operations, 29 salaried employees and 1,073 hourly employees, $73.4 million. Person you'd most likely see when you go in a building in that group would be the custodial staff. The next category, school administration, principal, assistant principal, administrative assistants, $42.8 million, 5.7% of the budget. School clerical, people that keep track of all the paperwork, record the attendance of students in school, assist in the library, in the office. School clerical, $17.6 million. That's 2.4% of it. 93.3% of the money spent on personnel is spent on personnel physically located in a school. The next category of district employees, 5.4% of the budget, $39.1 million, goes to district employees, 126 professional staff, and 273 classified staff, hourly employees. That's the district level employees, excluding district leadership. And that last category, the smallest person you can see up there, is district director and above. That's the people responsible for running everything at the district level. All of those support operations, supervising principals, people in this room with the titles of assistant superintendent, director, executive director, superintendent, 1.3%, $9.2 million out of this entire budget. The lowest amount spent per pupil for that purpose for any school district in the state of South Carolina. Non-budgeted expenditures, fixed cost represent 38% of that. That's the biggest piece of that pie. Fixed costs are utilities, insurance, items over which we have no control or little control. We control utilities to as great a degree as we can. We've not expanded the utility budget in more than 8 years by increasingly investing in energy-saving moves. You see the other items there, technical and data processing, instructional support, instruction, district support, maintenance support, all those support categories, those are the supplies and materials that are used in schools on a daily basis. Everything from floor wax to copy paper to minor parts for repairs. That's the operating budget. The non-salary part, $65.4 million. Give some perspective to where our investment goes. An overview, as we look at the budget recommendation, just in general terms, it recognizes the importance of teaching and non-teaching employees through pay increases to maintain our competitive status. Meets all mandates. We receive mandates every year from the state having to do with pay, fringe benefits, and other items that have a financial impact to the school district, some of which are partially funded some of which are not funded at all, and some of which are funded to the degree that's necessary to meet them. This budget maintains all current staffing levels and provides improvement to special education services, multilingual services, and career and technical education. You looked at the positions we looked at earlier. All those school level positions are generated, for the most part, with very few exceptions, on a formula. You have so many students, you have this many personnel to address those students, whether it be teachers, clerical, assistant principals, counselors. Basically, everyone in the school is on a formula, except there's one principal. I guess that technically is a formula, and there's one plant engineer. Everything else is formula driven by the number of pupils in that building. Addresses growth in student numbers. Every year we grow 1,000 to 1,800 students. And all those new houses that people build and people move into from the outside of Greenville County, or an existing house they move into where they come from the outside of Greenville County, they generate some number of students. That house generates not $1 for school operating purposes. This budget also provides for some adjustment for inflation in services and supplies, recognizing that 8% hits everything we buy. In some cases, inflation has hit some particular items related to some of the technical work that's done and some of the maintenance and repair work, 18, 20, 25%. As many of you know from things that you may do around your own home or business. Doesn't attempt to address that across the board, but provides some addressing of that inflation. Enhances student and employee safety and security. The highest priority we have. Students cannot learn, teachers cannot teach effectively, employees cannot support them effectively if it's not a safe and secure environment. So how is this funded? There's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding about how it's funded. So to think about how it's currently funded, it's important to understand a little bit about how it has been funded. From 1977 until the budget proviso in fiscal year 23, the one for the year we're in, funding for schools was allocated through the Education Finance Act, which was based on a 70-30 state to local funding ratio. State provided 70%, local school district was expected to provide 30%. It varied a little bit based on the wealth of the district, and there was a formula that determined that. In 2008, the local portion of the Education Finance Act funding was altered with the passage of Act 388, which removed owner-occupied homes from taxes for school operating purposes. Prior to Act 388, there was a statutory requirement that annually initiated an automatic millage increase placed into effect without action of the school board, the purpose of which was to ensure the 30% match from the local school district was funded. It was in statute. It was a formula that calculated the amount that millage was increased. So this body would not have taken a vote on it. It was increased automatically through what was called the maintenance of effort calculation. After the implementation of Act 388, the maintenance of effort was subsequently removed. Now, not the expectation that there be a local share to funding, but it was replaced with the state's commitment to offset the loss of that revenue through property tax relief and homestead exemption funding. That's when the homes were taken out. That's referred to in our budget documents as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. In a minute, we'll see the value of that. Act 388 also implemented a hard cap for millage increases that does require action of the school board for local millage increase. Now there's an expectation of a 75-25 match. So you sent you sent $75, $100, you expect it to come up with 25. There's not an automatic. It requires the vote or the action of the school board to implement that tax increase. Had owner-occupied residences not been removed for tax purposes, $417 million in additional revenue would have been generated to Greenville County Schools this year at our current millage rate of 147.7. The total projected FY24 revenue from property tax relief and homestead exemption funds is $120 million. So the state removed homes, replaced it with tier 1, 2, and 3 reimbursement. This year, those homes would have been worth $417 million. The reimbursement comes in at $120 million. The new state education funding formula is based on a 75-25 state to local funding ratio. That new state funding formula is calculated using the average state teacher's cost. So the average teacher in the state has a master's degree and 12 years experience. The average cost on the state minimum salary schedule multiplied by the number of teachers to attain the target student-teacher ratio of 11.2 to 1. Because in the state of South Carolina, and I'll show you in just a minute who the state considers a teacher, there's actually a ratio of 11.2 students to every teacher. Each district's share of the total is calculated using a ratio of its weighted pupil units. A regular student taking regular classes is worth 1. The highest weighting would be a student receiving special education services is rated at a 2.6. There are a few other weightings in there, which means the amount that your funding's based on, it's not we have 78,000 students. That number is going to be higher than 78,000 because they're weighted. But it's weighted times that teacher salary, the average minimum salary. So if you want to look at it by a teacher, that's what it looks like. The state, master's and 12 years experience is $52,604. They've increased that by, you hear the state talk about $2,500. That brings that salary to $55,104. The fringe benefits, that fringe benefit package is required by the state. It is the employer's contribution to employees' retirement, Social Security, and health benefits as mandated by the state. On a $55,104 salary, that costs $17,887, making the total cost for that average teacher $72,991. If we did not increase teacher pay one dime, didn't increase it one dime, other than the amount they got for a step, which we are required to do by the state. Teacher advances one more year, they're required to get that step. Our average teacher for FY24 with no other pay raise other than the step comes in at $58,154. Their fringe benefit cost to the employer is $18,877, which means the total cost for that one teacher with no pay raise is $77,031. With a $2,600 pay raise, it brings that to $80,475. If we offer no raise other than that which we're required to do, the district's still having to come up with $4,000 for each one of those teachers. And there is a similar amount for every one of the teachers we have employed in the district is paid on the state teacher salary schedule. That's a requirement. We have 33 steps on our schedule. We don't stop recognizing experience with 23. Every step above 23, from 24 up through 33, we would get from the state in that calculation that same amount for masters of 12 years experience. We have 5,909 employees paid on the teacher salary schedule, right at 6,000, 11,000 people. Here's who the state considers a teacher. Classroom teachers, special ed teachers, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and retired teachers being those retired teachers still employed as a regular teacher. Library media specialists or librarians, school counselors, speech therapists, ROTC instructors, school nurses, occupational physical therapists, orientation mobility instructors, audiologists, social workers, and psychologists. If you look below that, just as a general grouping, those are all the people that the state does not consider to be a teacher, for which there is zero funding. The funding is based on that first group, including people we're required to employ, like a principal. And interestingly enough, pre-kindergarten and kindergarten teachers are required to have an aide. They're not included in the calculation for the state funding that generates state funding. So if we look more specifically at what we're recommending, a $2,600 increase to every cell on the teacher salary schedule to help us to maintain pay at the very top in our state to attract and retain quality teachers. A step for every teacher, including our most experienced teachers, which is that addition of a 35th step for 1%. Entry-level teacher salary that would result from the recommendation is $47,738. A step increase for all eligible employees at a minimum of 3.5%. A 3.5% increase for all employees not eligible for a step. Increases in supports for GATE program participants and mentors for first-year teachers. That's to mentor our individuals that are coming to us from another profession, and we're converting them to certified, qualified classroom teachers. It has a higher retention rate than almost any other entry-level teaching program, and one of the reasons is because we assign them mentors for 2 years. We need to pay the teachers that are being their mentors more. We're also increasing the number of slots for GATE participants, again, to train people to take the teaching vacancies that we have. An increase of $2,100 and a step equal to a minimum of 3.5% for our nurses. We have the greatest turnover in personnel in the system right now in the nurse category. The greatest turnover. It's creating a much more competitive salary for them. We can't be competitive with specialized nursing positions in the hospital system, but more competitive with the nursing wages for doctor's offices, for other state employment, for the less technically expertise nurses in the hospital system. A more competitive wage. Increase from bus driver salary schedule, 12% and 10.7% depending on steps. They're on 2 different steps. Our second greatest percentage of turnover. By number of employees, a larger number, but second greatest percentage. Continue to address internal salary inequities for some district level employees. That's primarily the largest group there affected would be assistant principals and people at the district and school level that are non-teacher, they're on non-teacher pay schedules for the number of years that we skipped giving them a step. Personnel for growth to meet an estimated increase of 1,073 students. Funding to meet the required employer contribution for health insurance and retirement. Increased support for students with disabilities, multilingual learners. CTE, we're opening a new CTE Innovation Center to expand into job areas that we currently are not providing opportunities to our students for in high demand, high wage, high growth jobs. The third year rollout of the new Fountain Inn High School, staffing for year 3 was loaded one class level at a time. Next year they will have an 11th grade. Adding 2 roofers in the maintenance department to more quickly address roofing needs and concerns on short-term maintenance issues. Funding to further enhance school security. Funding for increased supply and service contracts, again related to inflation. Special revenue fund shortfall. The state moved over $6 million worth of personnel from a fund where we got 100% for those persons to a fund where we're getting 75% for them. So to keep those people, it adds to our general fund cost. Paid parental leave, passed by the General Assembly in the last 2 to 3 weeks to ensure that parents have up to 12 weeks for maternity or paternity leave, ensuring pay for 6 of those 12, which has a cost impact to us. Fully funding the recommendations just reviewed in the budget packet results in a $14.9 million difference between revenue and expenditures. And to balance the budget, we recommend a 9 mil tax increase. 9 mils generates for the school district $14.9 million. Not some of the other numbers that we've heard mentioned or seen circulated on social media. There's a lot of erroneous information out there. 9 mils generates $14.9 million. What is the impact to the taxpayer of that recommended increase? Per the U.S. Department of Transportation, the average age of a vehicle in the United States is 12 years old. The most popular vehicles are a Toyota Camry, a Nissan Altima, and a Ford F-150. State law provides that a previously taxed vehicle cannot exceed 95% of its prior year taxable value, essentially a mandatory minimum 5% depreciation every year. This means that even if a used vehicle rises in value in the market, it cannot be taxed greater than 95% of its previous year's tax value. The projected impact of a 9 mil increase on a Toyota Camry, a Nissan Altima, and a Ford F-150, the 3 most popular vehicles in America, the average age of a vehicle in America, the annual increased cost for the owner of that Toyota is 15 cents. The average annual increased cost for the owner of that Nissan is 16 cents. The average increased cost for the owner of that Ford F-150 is 62 cents a year. Why do we use that? This is where the majority of the impact to the individual person comes as far as school taxes, because those taxes are levied on trucks, cars, boats, trailers that require a tag, and an airplane. So the owner of those, and this is if you look at the average person, this is the average car and the average age, that's the impact to that person for those vehicles. So if you don't buy a new car or a newer car, or you don't buy an additional vehicle, you have a very minimal impact. In fact, in most years, the tax increase, in the years we recommend one, you're actually paying less the next year on the car you own than you paid the current year. This year's a little different because of the 9 mil increase. Anything over about 7 mils, there's a minor increase to what you pay for the car you already own. There's an example. There's the Toyota. The 22 tax on that Toyota is $20.05 for school operating purposes. School operating purposes. 23 tax will be $19.20. The 24 tax will be $19.35. More than the tax on the 2011 in 23, but less than the tax on it in 22. Obviously, it was 2 years newer in 22. Business tax. The impact of a millage increase on local businesses. So here are 4 businesses: restaurant, machine shop, pharmacy, a flower shop. Annually on a restaurant. These are actual businesses. We remove the names. Kind of a medium price as far as a restaurant is the restaurant. $146.19 annually. $12 a month, $12.18 a month. Machine shop, $261 annually, $21.75 a month. A pharmacy, $407.08 annually, $33.92 a month. A flower shop, $366.09 annually, $30.51 a month. Now, when you look at business, that's the property tax side. Depending on how businesses structure themselves and they're accounting for their assets, they can be depreciating those same assets, which can result in a reduction on the other taxes they pay outside of property tax. And you see some examples of that. That's almost on an individual basis, depending on how they choose to depreciate equipment and how they choose to take that depreciation on their tax to offset income. That's just simply something to be aware of. You see some examples there. If you purchase an office building that costs $500,000, for example, some people obviously pay taxes. They own buildings and lease them to others, or they own it for their own purpose. Building costs $500,000, you could depreciate that over 39 years. Or you could basically depreciate it out in one, down to the minimum allowable. There's the impact to owner-occupied homes. That's how much it will cost a person who owns their own home to fund the increase in school operating taxes. The taxes that were mentioned earlier, county tax, city tax, any other property taxes are levied on owner-occupied homes, but not taxes for school operating purposes. Business or industry. You read about fee in lieu of taxes quite often. If your business has a fee in lieu of taxes, or an industry has a fee in lieu of taxes, the amount of this tax increase to them is zero. They have a negotiated set fee they pay in lieu of taxes. There's one other impact that people don't often talk about, and that's the impact of increased wage to the economy. Generally speaking, if you look at various models by economists, the average projection is for a $1 increase in wage, you can expect anywhere from $1.20 to $1.50 to be generated back out in the local economy. So these pay increases that are proposed help our employees to offset the effects of inflation upon them. They certainly do require some burden on the local taxpayer, and that we acknowledge. We try to balance that out. but also understand there can also be benefit to the local economy by infusing additional dollars into that economy. The business of education is conducted by people, with people, and for people. At its core, it's people-centered. The quality of the product is directly related to the quality of the individuals who teach our students daily in the classroom, lead instruction at the school level, and support those efforts at the district and school level. Research substantiates the single greatest factor over which we have control for student attainment is a quality teacher in the classroom and a quality principal in the school. Research also indicates that quality services supporting those efforts have a positive effect on student achievement. Higher educational attainment improves all positive measures of a community: economic prosperity, lower crime rate, increased health of the population, and every other measure of quality of life. That's why we started this presentation with the return on investment. Ms. Bush, any questions that board members might have, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. A lot of information. I hope that it was very eye-opening for some of you. It's exciting. We meet here 2 Tuesdays a month. So you're all welcome to join us as we go through the year's process and how this board does its business and the transparency efforts that we try to provide. And all of this information that we had here tonight is available on our website, correct?
In fact, the part that we just completed, it should be posted now.
Great. So if you want to share any of that information or you want to go back and fact check any of that information, you're welcome to. And I will now open it up to questions or comments. Mr. Sailors.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess so we can have the discussion in proper form, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 24 general fund budget.
I have a motion and a second. We will have discussion. Mr. Sailors.
Motion, if I could. Dr. Royster, a couple of quick questions. You mentioned in your presentation the $9.2 million that is spent on personnel at the senior administrative level was the lowest in South Carolina. Did I hear that correctly? It is the lowest in South Carolina?
The lowest amount spent per pupil in South Carolina, it's, I believe, a penny of a dollar. But it's the lowest amount spent by any school district in the state on a per pupil basis.
Since we're the largest, we can honestly say all smaller school systems spend more money than we do. Correct?
There is nobody that spends less per pupil, no matter their size. And generally speaking, the smaller you are, the less cost-effective senior leadership would be, because to a degree you have to have a certain number of people in certain areas to run the functions of the school system.
Which are required by law?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned in the presentation too, the state covers, whenever the state legislature mandates salary increases or step increases for teachers, they cover a portion of 23 steps. And we are responsible for everything over and above that.
Yes, sir. We're responsible, to your point, for how much we pay above those steps, the ones they do recognize, and all of what we pay beyond the steps that exist on the state salary schedule.
And that's how much approximately?
I don't know that we have that number calculated that way.
My point being is well, let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
How much are the state mandates costing the taxpayers in Greenville County this year because the state requires a number of functions to be covered, and they tell us what to do, but they don't come up with cash to pay for it?
Okay, the state mandates would be retirement, health fringe, STEP, additional certification, and did I leave one out?
Paid parental leave.
Roughly $20 million.
Maternity, paternity leave. What would those total?
$21,758,000.
Oh, $21 million.
Yes, sir.
Where the General Assembly says you will do X, whatever that may be. But oh, by the way, you have to pay for it.
None of which had anything to do with salary increase. Those are simply, to your point, Mr. Taylor, mandates. There's no mandated salary increase except the step.
There were a couple of items in the comments, public comments, that were I found curious. I need to clarify one thing. There was a statement in one of the speakers' comments that we're facing a state tax increase. Did I miss something? Is there an increase in state income taxes this year?
There's no tax increases we're aware of from General Assembly.
Okay, and we do still perform an annual audit every year, and that audit is on our website as well, correct?
Yes, sir. As required by law, it's completed and posted on or before December the 1st.
But my point being is anyone in this community that cares to see how much money we spend for what, to the exact penny, can go to that document and find it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then one last question. I know that during the budget process, the administration asks department heads and schools for items that they would like to have included in the budget for consideration. Can you share with us how much was requested and not included?
What was the amount requested but not included, Ms. Thomas?
It was a little over $118 million.
And if we were to have funded that $118 million worth of requests from principals, department heads, and supervisors in this district, would the millage rate that we still have available to us, over and above the 9 mills that we're requesting in this document, would that millage rate would be enough to cover that $118 million?
No, sir.
It would cover how much of that, Ms. Dack?
The required millage to cover that would be.
No. How much millage do they have available beyond the 9 we're requesting, and what amount would that generate?
Sorry, Robin.
Beyond the 9 mills, we have 25.3 mills left.
Well, that's roughly $30 million in the neighborhood.
Yes.
A little bit more than 30, yes, sir.
My point being is, we could have taken at our discretion the opportunity to use or leverage more millage to cover some of those items, and we chose not to. We stuck to the basics. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. I appreciate it. I just wanted to say that I was particularly struck by a comment that Mrs. Scott, a teacher in our district, made tonight. She said, people stay where they're valued. That was a profound statement to me, and it's really true. People stay where they feel valued. And I think as board members, we have a responsibility to make sure that teachers feel valued and that they continue to feel valued. There was a time, and I'm a former teacher myself, that a pat on the back, a thank you, an invitation to dinner really made the difference. That was okay. But I'm here to tell you that time has long passed. That time doesn't exist anymore. The teaching profession is a very complex profession. As a matter of fact, it's the profession that all professions come from. It's the source. Therefore, we have to educate, we have to value our educators. And a part of that valuing is we have to compensate them. So there's a reason that Greenville County Schools is 20% below the state average on teacher turnover. There's a reason why. And that's why, the reason why I believe is because as a board and as a county and a district, we've placed value on teachers. And even though we're struggling with retaining teachers, you heard that tonight from some of our very own teachers, how difficult that is, the hardships that's placed in their individual schools. Imagine that it was worse. In many parts of our state, it is much worse. And education, I'm telling you, is in crisis. I'm here to tell you that I served on the governor's task force for teacher retention and recruitment, and I'm well acquainted with some of the struggles. I've been into listening sessions from teachers across the state, and we're in crisis. So I believe we have to value our teachers. I believe we have to compensate them. I believe they're a priority. Dr. Royster made a comment. He said, the single greatest factor over which we have control for student attainment is a quality teacher in the classroom. I'm also a former principal, Skyland Elementary, National Blue Ribbon School, and I can tell you that that statement is true. A quality teacher in the classroom makes a profound difference on the outcomes. So if we want quality teachers, we have to pay for them. Just a couple more comments. A step of $2,600 to each sale on the teacher salary results in a 3.65% to a 7.54% increase. But the rate of inflation is 8%. We're still not going to compensate teachers at the rate of inflation, which is 8%. We're still falling short. So I don't feel that we're being excessive in what we're asking for our teachers. I feel that it's a step forward in the right direction to let our teachers know that they're valued, that they're respected, that they make a difference in our communities, they make a difference in our families, they make a difference for the future. So I believe that we have a responsibility to remember that comment that was made tonight. People stay where they're valued. I want to retain quality teachers. I want our schools to continue to prosper and do well and to be successful and to be at the top at the state and national level. That's a personal goal of mine. So I just felt compelled to make those statements tonight. And I just want to especially thank the teachers for being here. And I want to personally and publicly say thank you to the teachers for all that you do for our students and for our community. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Mr. Cochran.
Thank you. As some other people have said here tonight, and I certainly would like all of our personnel to have a great raise. I was a school teacher for 31 years, a good part of that here in Greenville County. But due to the current extremely high inflation rate, the drastic increase in prices of necessities such as food, gas, electricity, etc., I just don't think this is a time to be doing a tax increase. I favor a return to the levels that we were given in the budget work session that we had on April the 12th. I realize there's been a couple of mandates from the state legislature since then that is going to cost us more money. However, most of the increase in our budget since the time that we had that session until now does not come from the state mandates specifically, but from categories that were already in the budget, but that we are now recommending to fund at a greater level than they were originally recommended to be funded at. And I think we can return to the levels of spending that were in that projected budget from back on April the 12th, which does allow for the originally proposed salary increase for our teachers and for our other school personnel. And we can increase the amount of money we are using from the fund balance. And I realize there's a certain level that we don't want to go over with that, but if we go back to those previous levels, we can use the fund balance. We can still use less money out of the fund balance than what we used last year. And at the same time, we can avoid the need to raise taxes on a lot of our people out in the community that are really struggling at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mrs. Leventis Wales.
Well, Jeff, there are many topics that you just discussed that I was going to say. I always put teachers at the forefront because they are our lifelines to our students and their future. I too think, I reflect back on what we discussed in April as well. And I would like to know if there's any possible way, just because I've talked to so many small business owners, and everywhere I go, you can go to any restaurant and don't be surprised if you see the person that owns the restaurant take your order, take your money, and fix your food because they can't find help. No one wants to work, and people are struggling. And then we're dealing with all of this uncertainty in the community. People don't have money like they had before. And yes, the county is going to hit us with another with a tax increase. The city is going to possibly do a tax increase. And I know when you look at a 2011 Camry and you think, well, that's not much. Or when you look at your small business and you say, well, if you own this business, it's only $400 this year. Well, how much was it last year and the year before where it's been compounded? Each year you keep adding and adding and adding. But nobody looks at that because we're focused just on what's there tonight. And I appreciate that. I think it's very important that we acknowledge and we know what the addition is to what the addition was, and yet last year, year before, and year before. Also, when homes are reassessed, and Dr. Royce, I'm going to ask you this, when homes are reassessed, are we involved in that reassessment? Because that's another thing that I was wondering. I know Act 388 is not our friend. It is not our friend. And I know that if the county and the state would have done the proper thing, we would not be here tonight asking for a millage increase because it would be their responsibility to give us this money so that we could support our teachers, our children, and all the programs that are involved in our schools. But they've put the burden on the districts now. The other question I have for you, Dr. Royster, is do we actually know the bottom line as to what Columbia, our legislatures, are going to pass? Do we know how much we possibly could get, or do we know that we're not going to get, it could be this or this? And, I know those are a lot of questions, but I too feel like there might come a time then we might have to use some of the fund balance to offset, just so that we can support the people in Greenville City and County, as well as give our teachers what they so deserve. And that we form a win-win situation instead of somebody's going to have to do without. Why do we have to do that to people? Haven't they been through enough already? I think they have. And I think it's not going to get any better. Thank you.
To answer your questions in the order, I believe that I've heard them. Reassessment, the only thing that we have to do with reassessment is we're impacted by it. Reassessment occurs every 5 years. The county has the option to defer it for one additional year, which if I recall correctly, the last reassessment they deferred for an additional year. So it was 2 years ago, which affected the current year we're in. The rules for reassessment are simply this. No taxing entity may receive more for the reassessed property than it received for the property the year before. So if our total amount of property tax revenues, will make up a number, if it was $200 million in the year before reassessment, when the property's reassessed, we get no more than $200 million. It doesn't matter how much an individual property went up. The district realizes only the exact same amount of revenue it received in total from the year before. There's a cap of 15% on how much the assessment can go up on individual property. But that again doesn't apply to homes. That has to do with cars, trucks, boats, trailers, non-owner occupied dwellings, apartment buildings, small businesses. But all of those, we receive no windfall from that. I think the other issue you asked about was the use of, you talked about use of fund balance. And you may recall, to avoid a millage increase, we went 2 years without increasing the millage, without recommending that. We utilized $21 million from fund balance. To appropriately utilize fund balance without it affecting the credit rating of the district, which ultimately can cost taxpayers more money, or digging a hole the district can never dig itself out of. You have to have a planned reduction in your reliance on fund balance, which we have incrementally reduced over time. You have to say at the outset what your planned reduction is. We had it planned to phase out over a 5-year period. We're on track to do that. That is not a long-term solution for funding recurring cost. Again, you'll dig a hole so deep that even the most extraordinary tax increase, which no one would want to do anyway, would be able to dig you out of that hole. And I think the other thing we have to think about, and I think I mentioned it in our budget presentation, we tried to very carefully balance the interest of our 11,000 employees who are also being faced with 8% inflation. Our pay raises don't reach the level of 8%. In fact, for the average teacher, it ends up, I think the average teacher pay raise is 5%, and the average for non-teaching employees is?
It's about the 3%.
Slightly over 3.5%. So we've attempted to balance out the interest and the needs and the demands from inflation on our employees with concern for how that affects the taxpayer in the district. This is the only source that we have locally for funding. And to go back to a lesser increase for teachers would obviously drop our position in what we pay teachers. But again, we've incrementally, over a 10-year period, moved substantially up from being at the bottom of the top third of the state to being in the top 3 in the state. And that is, we believe, the path forward for us to continue to attract and retain quality teachers and quality employees in other areas. And we certainly sympathize and understand the difficulty in attracting employees in all industries, because we employ people across the board in all kinds of jobs. And as you all know, by the action of this body, substantially increased our entry-level wages for our employees from slightly over $10 an hour to $15 an hour over a 3-year period. Trying to ensure that we continue to get employees to fill our positions and that those employees are earning a living wage.
Do we know what the legislatures have in the budget?
We do. The bottom line from the legislature, which I think was your third question, might have been second in order. Anytime there's a budget, there's a House version, there's a Senate version. Some years there is disagreement in amounts in that budget. for all kinds of things. The one we're particularly concerned with is education. When there's a difference in the House amount and in the Senate amount, in the budget as a whole, not just the education part, there's a difference in the budget in the whole. It is referred to a conference committee, which is comprised of House members and Senate members. That committee may be given free conference or not. If they are given free conference, there is no restriction on how they might change the amounts in that budget. If they are not given free conference powers, they must take one number or the other, or a number in between the two, in any place where there is a difference. The Budget Committee this year does not have free conference powers. The amounts in the budget to fund school districts is the exact same amount in the House version as the Senate version. That would be the amount that would be required that the the conference committee come back and recommend to the full legislature. So there is not a difference there. In a year where there is a difference, they could come back with if one number were higher than the other, they could come back with a higher number. We generally give you information on the lower number because that's the worst case scenario. In this case, it is an equal number.
How much is in our fund balance today?
Through our last published financial statement of March 2023, we had $320,558,000.
Which includes the amount that the board's already approved to transfer
The
from the building
transfer out.
fund, which is how much?
$85 million.
Which includes the required amount from the board.
$65 million.
Okay. And it includes, so everybody in the room, and I know the board members already understand this, fund balance is not just excess money. So because it's March, we get most of our tax revenue in January. It would include revenue in it for March, April, May, and June expenditures. So it is, to a degree, some people like to think of it as like a savings account. It's not really. It's like a checking account that has a saving component in it, because at the end of the year, on June the 30th, when the auditors come in, they'll reconcile the books, and there will be an amount there that's revenue in excess of expense, more than what we need to meet cash flow issues and to meet the required board policy. What this body has traditionally done over the years, as recommended by the administration, is to invest those dollars in non-recurring items, having the effect of offsetting potential tax increases. For example, to accelerate that building program to the tune of how much, Robin?
$85 million.
$85 million. To build the buildings that we need to have to meet the needs of the growing population, to accelerate being able to build those, that $85 million would have offset tax increases to the debt service fund. So you're using that money over time to minimize any tax increase in debt service and offset future expenditures for that purpose, to ensure we have enough rooms for the number of students that are moving in here every year.
I was looking at some of the items, trying to figure out if we had items on there that were not reoccurring items.
We generally speaking do not recommend in the general fund budget the inclusion of non-recurring items, because the way to approach that is to go back and ask you all to approve fund balance to be used for that purpose.
And we have completed, we no longer have any ESSER funding. Is that correct?
Still have ESSER funding, which we will use to further offset general fund, which will pump fund balance.
Mhm.
We have ESSER funding that's committed for operating virtual school again next year and for continuing to provide interventionists in reading and math to make sure our students are recovering from any learning that they may have missed during the pandemic, which has been, we believe, highly effective. For this year, 64% of our schools were back where they were or above where they were before the pandemic. Now, that doesn't reflect this year's gains, which we'll know in a couple of months.
Well, I'm always going to support our teachers and aides and custodia, bus drivers, everyone. I just feel like they are the backbone of this district and everybody involved. So thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Okay, so I have a few questions here as well. With us being number 3 statewide in minimum teacher pay, who are the other 2 districts? Who's number 1 and number 2?
Beaufort's number 1. Who's number 2, Stephanie? They're further down.
Minimum. Anderson 5.
And I believe I remember someone saying that they got a raise last year. When was the last time that teachers did get a raise in Greenville County?
Teachers have received a raise. The only year they did not receive a raise was in 2010, Robin, when the state held in abeyance the required step. So in the midst of the greatest recession since the Depression, no employee got a raise. No one. There has not been any other year that teachers have not received some raise and some raise above the step. And that's adding that step was accomplished. I think we would now, with this recommended budget, we'd be at 34 steps. But those steps were added incrementally over the years. Seemed to me like about 10 or 12 years ago, we were at 26 steps. Does that sound right? Definitely Robin may have that history in here, but the short answer to your question is, with the noted exception, there have been raises for teachers each year. Generally, always more than the raises for other employees when you add in the step. Sometimes an equal percentage, but when you add in the step, more. And in the last several years, a fair difference more. As you can see by the range for teachers, it was at the low end about 3.75%, and at the upper end was 7.5, 7.4. And when you see the range for other employees, it's less than that.
And my next question has to do with Act 388. So as far as rentals and rental property is concerned, do we have a number that we get from that? We do actually receive taxes from rental properties, correct?
The owner of rental property is taxed at 6% for the assessed value of the rental property.
And next question. If you look under goal number 2, premier workforce, number 4, 5, and 6 have to do with state health employer contribution rates. And the insurance premiums apparently have gone up a couple of times in the past few years. Is that something that we can shop around, or is that something that we're locked into? And also, can you explain the state retirement employer contribution rate increase?
Yes. State health insurance, to answer that question, we have no choice. There was a time like 40, 50 years ago school districts negotiated their own health insurance. But probably 30 to 40 years ago, it was mandated that school districts utilize the state health plan. Now, maybe you could go out and get equal coverage for less, but pretty significant buying power of the state, given the number of state employees. But we don't have a choice about that. And you'll see there are 2 increases in there. And the reason there are 2 increases in there is the health insurance is negotiated on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So this year, we have to budget for the half year we didn't budget for last year. That makes sense. Last summer, there was going to be a cost increase to our employees starting January 1. So we had to budget from the January to June portion of that. Now this year, we have to budget for the other half, the July to December portion, plus the increase that goes into effect in January. That's why it's listed 2 different ways. And we have literally no control. They tell us this is how much it's going up. The retirement, there was a decision made by the General Assembly several years ago to bring greater solvency to the retirement system to increase the employer contribution. This is supposed to be the final step that was approved several years ago. So it has incrementally increased over time to where now it's 24.81% from the employer. Our employees also contribute. Their contribution is now at
9%.
9%. So they contribute toward their own retirement. But again, a mandated cost to us. We also are required to carry forward the cost of insurance for retirees if we were their last place of state employment. So we contribute towards retiree health insurance.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Bush.
Thank you. I have a few things, and they've already been, I think, briefly brought up. But have we talked a little bit about money that we had in the past, such as the COVID money, and that is not part of, that will expire, and we will not have that?
As we did with other non-recurring revenue, the predominant recommendation for the use of COVID funds that we made to the board was for non-recurring items. The only recurring cost in the budget are those math and reading interventionists. And we were very careful to not employ more of them than we knew we could absorb through regular hiring of teachers in the year the funding ran out. There are, Jeff, 134 of them.
I was thinking it was close to 140, but it's between 130 and
Right, so
140.
let's say there's 100. If there are 140 positions, we have to go back and get the exact count. But if there were 140, in any given year, we may hire 800 teachers. So in 1 year's hiring cycle, we can absorb those teachers.
That's money we will not have, though, that we had.
When it's gone, it's gone.
Also, the parental leave is unfunded.
That is correct.
And although it has been passed, we will have to fund that ourselves when
effective July 1, we will have to fund that cost. And to a degree, it is our best, most educated estimate as to what it will cost. Because what we don't know is how many people, we know in a given year how many people go on maternity leave. Obviously, we can go look back at that. What we don't know is how many took less than 12 weeks who will now take perhaps as much as 6 more weeks maternity leave that we'll incur a cost for. We also did not have paternity leave. We had sick leave that a father could use if there were illness in the family, just like any other time there's an illness in the family, but not paternity leave. So there are unknowns there that and the way we derive that is the state did a calculation based on what they believed it to be with I think, pregnancy rate of like 2.5%, something like that. Then we also solicited from the 3 school districts in the state that already had maternity, paternity leave, though theirs was structured differently. And we put our number between the two. So it's not the max number, which the state generated through their calculation, but it's not the number those 3 districts spent prorated for our size, because theirs was set up where you had to use all your own leave first. Then if there was any difference, they would pay it. So that is our most educated estimate based on those 2 factors.
And we also have legislation has been passed for at least some portion of the budget to go to private schools.
Yes.
So that will be money that we will not get.
That's correct.
That would have been in the state budget.
I think at one time,
Small amount, but still.
Well, I think actually one of the amounts that was discussed was about enough to move teacher pay to $50,000. I think that, and I don't know what the ultimate amount that passed was. Julie, you may know.
It has been estimated anywhere from 30 million to 75 million, and up to 90 to 120 as it rolls through into year 3. They're also considering another program too that would be tax credits. But yeah, there have been a lot of different numbers thrown around, but I think originally they're just looking the first year maybe 30 million, but possibly up to 120 million.
And the last thing I think I'll reiterate is that we do ask teachers to be professionals. We want people that have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and in many cases, doctorate degrees. And some of them have great expertise in many topics. And what I've seen and understood through my conversations with businesses and my own daughters who are in the medical profession is that they have received pay increases which are commensurate with inflation, 8% at least. So I think out there in the community, businesses are, in order to keep their employees, the good ones, they are giving inflationary pay increases, whether it be hourly or whether it be salary. So I do not think, I think this is kind of a reasonable pay raise based on just what we are all dealing with in inflation. Teachers have to, find housing in the area, and just like everybody else, and we don't really want to lose them to another either district or state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Ms. Doolan.
Thank you. My concern really can't be addressed today, but I'd like to bring it up anyway. People stay where they are valued. That was a good quote. Currently, if anyone wants to Google it, I'm looking at Greenville County Schools Teacher Salary Schedule 2022, 2023. Starting pay for a teacher right out of school is $45,000. Their raise isn't to $46,000 until their 8th year of teaching. Well, who in the world is going to stay at a job for 8 years when the person who walks in the door with 0 experience makes like $300 less than they do? So I think with our strategic plan, we really need to address not starting teacher pay, but the step schedule, because that is valuing teachers with experience I think is more important than attracting new teachers. Because if more teachers stay, you don't need as many new teachers. But that's going to cost a lot more. So there's that.
I think we'd simply offer in response to Ms. Dillon that we would need to do both. And to your point, that just costs even more.
It does cost more. It's an investment because it's worth it. My opinion is. Well, I was going to vote no on this tax increase. I don't think that comes as a surprise to any of my colleagues. Because I think that there are some programs that we're funding that aren't necessarily worth the investment or haven't shown to be worth the investment. And so I think that there are things in our budget that can be cut, and that's not something that we have discussed. I recognize that these mandates, there's nothing we can do about it. I recognize the importance of giving our employees raises, but I also think there are other ways to do it. So I have a feeling this will pass, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doolin. Mrs. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. What I wanted to say to our teachers, we value you. And I've always said, since I've been up here since 2016, that the educators should be the highest paid profession in the world. Because, and the parents found that out during the pandemic, when they wanted the kids to come back to you once they had to teach them at home. So, what I'm gonna say is that, you know, everything that Burke has brought us in this budget is needed. We need the psychologists, we need the speech therapists, we need, and we can't do anything about the unfunded mandates. We just can't. That is something that they always do to us. They tell us what to do and don't give us any money for it. But I want to say that we support you, and that I think this is a good budget because we can't keep digging away at that general fund. Because, I mean, he said that, you know, we would lose our rating or whatever. And these are recurring these are recurring costs that we have to do. Y'all, we have to pay to operate the school district. And we've got so much growth going on in Greenville County. Have y'all talked to some of your people that's coming here from up north, how much taxes they pay? And you know what? If the legislature wouldn't have done this to us in 2006 with Act 388, where we don't get taxes from properties, and we have to come every year. They give us so many mills per year that we can assess, and we never assess all of them because we have what, 25 left or something like that. We're asking for 9. And it's for operations. This is the largest school district in South Carolina. It takes a lot of money to run it. And we have excellent schools and we have excellent people. That's why we have so many people moving here. So, with that being said, I'm Michelle Goodwin-Caldwell. I support y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Michelle Goodwin-Caldwell, for those comments. And our next speaker is Dr. Presley.
Short and sweet. To our educators, thank you so very much for everything you do. To our parents in Greenville County School District who expect the best for our students, let my vote speak for itself, and it will.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Presley. Dr. Ms. Mosley.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. I just have a couple clarification points. They're random. Dr. Royster, you had pointed out, I don't know what slide it looks like, slide number 9, talked about the budget overview. The third bullet talks about maintaining current staffing levels, which provides improvement to special ed, I think the multi-language and CTE. And you made the comment, every position with the exception of, I think it was the school or the plant engineer and principal, is formula driven. Is that, when you say I just want to make sure I understand what formula driven means. Can you, does that mean that we obviously are mandated by a state or some agency that we have a certain ratio per classroom? Because I know that might vary from a kindergarten classroom to a special ed classroom to a general ed classroom.
That's both correct, but it's not quite a full answer.
Okay.
There are some mandates as to class size. We generally are well underneath those mandates. This board having recognized that being better than, actually, I think the state one for middle school is like 35 to 1, something like that. Upper elementary is very high. This body a number of years ago adopted lower ones. But there's literally a formula for every position in a school. And I guess technically, as I said earlier, the plant engineer and the principal, that's a formula too. There's one of them, but there's one per building. But assistant administrators, certain number of students, generate an assistant. The requirement, for example, at an elementary school, you don't have to have an assistant principal or an assistant administrator until you have 600 students. Well, that was probably fine in 1960 when they wrote that requirement, but all of our elementaries, regardless of size, have at least one assistant. When they get to over 800, they have 2. There's a difference now in what they pay being approved by your budget. But every position in a school, for every so many students, there's so many clerks. There's so many counselors. At the secondary level, it's 1 for every 250 students. At the elementary level, is to provide a certain number of hours of guidance services based on the size of school. For special education services, it would vary on the disability being served, and it varies from, there's a desired ratio of psychologists to students, speech therapists to students, OT and orthopedics, sorry. It would have been easier to say earlier in the evening. Physical therapist, just about everything you can imagine we do on a formula. And in your budget book, in the appendix section, you have a listing of all the assignment allocation formulas.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. Okay. And then, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm going to ask it because Mr. Saylor's asked, how much was asked for that we did not fund, that we decided, I think you showed us at the last meeting, a giant notebook of all the requests that came in, and
it's sitting right over there if anybody wants to see it.
And from that giant notebook, we're being asked to fund what essentially is translating to 9 mills above.
$14.9 million
right.
above the revenue we have.
Okay. So to Ms. Doolin's point, since you go through the exercise of going through that notebook and discerning what makes the most sense, whether it's ROI, need, whatever it is there a process that you go through to determine what doesn't make sense anymore? In other words, things that we incur expense, like programs that are not working for us, money that is being spent, as has been implied, that might be wasteful. So just like you go through that notebook, is there the reverse process for that?
Yeah, about every third year, we take every department back to zero. Just about everything in a school is formula based. We may look at those formulas from time to time. In fact, on occasion, a few years ago, we recommended adding a +1 clerical to every school's clerical allocation because of the amount of work that we're having to do. But we go back to zero for every departmental budget about every 3 years. Every year they review the budget with them. But it takes several hundred hours for several people who sit with every department head and go through every line item on their budget. Now, when you look at programs, we have Jason's department to study various programs intermittently. One that we've discussed very recently that I think we made some statements to you all about in the spring was, what's our return on early college? And we've done a significant revision to early college. They're making better academic progress, but we've said within this 2-3 year window, if it is not where it needs to be, we're going to eliminate it. Well, we've looked at a lot of programs over the years like that. A number of years ago, quite a few, we eliminated the Teen Parent Center and replaced it with counseling support for pregnant teenagers or both the mother or the father. Far less cost and far more effective. So we do that from time to time with various programs. Most of our programs are pretty well entrenched. The ones that you think about that are above baseline allocations, like the entire Fine Arts Center, that's not on a formula. That's having made that decision to operate that program. The career centers, they're not on a formula. It's a decision to operate those programs that are leading to industry certifications. Now, over the last several years, we have discontinued some career programs because they didn't produce people that were candidates for higher paying jobs, and replace them with programs that do produce graduates for higher paying jobs. So there is a constant reevaluation, not of every program every year, because we wouldn't have the staff to be able to do that, but intermittently of programs. And if there is some particular program the board would like us to review, we'd certainly do that and have Dr. McCreary's staff to conduct a study of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Dr. Smalls.
Yes, there are some who may ask, is 9.1 mils, is that excessive? I know that question has gone through a lot of individuals' minds, and sometimes it's hard to wrap your arms around, what does that mean, 9.1 mils? But I just want to bring out an important point, that our state has some control over the millage that we can increase. As a matter of fact, they have a formula, and it has, I'm not aware of the formula, I don't use it, but based on inflation, it determines the amount of millage that we as a board can set. And Dr. Royster, you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this year, that the state set our ability to increase millage to 16.1 based on inflation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Thank you very much. So that really helps the taxpayer and those who are interested and those who are in our audience to see that 9.1 mils, that 7 mils that we're going to leave on the table. Is that correct? All right. So I think that is a reasonable, and I believe that this investment, this 9.1 mils, is a true investment in our teachers and in our employees. And it's a statement of saying, you are valued. I think there's an investment that will pay dividends way into the future. And I just wanted to bring that comment out and point to that and to say again that I think it's a worthy investment. Thank you.
To address the first point about the formula, it's really not for improvements. The formula is based on county population growth and inflation. That's where the state derives the number that they communicate to us and say to meet the needs of your population growth and inflation. So it's not to add any special, it's basically to be able to continue to do what you're doing.
Stiles, Ms. LaVentus Wales.
Trying to think outside the box a little bit, Dr. Royster, and I don't know if this is going to bring anything to the table, but have we thought about giving the raises to the teachers and everyone, but the step increases be a bonus? and then that's not a recurring fund.
Step increases for teachers are required.
We thought about the salary and raises being a bonus, and then the increases be the salary.
Well,
I'm trying to.
you can pay a bonus, but that doesn't assure teachers of that salary going forward.
That's not.
And if you pay a bonus for those teachers who are in their 3 last years before retirement, when their lifetime retirement earnings are calculated, the amount of that bonus will not be included in the retirement calculation.
Okay, so if the legislatures vote more money for us, would we come back to the table and do something with that additional funding to offset the millage increase? Or
Certainly could do that. Your millage is actually not set until August.
okay,
You take the action to cause it to be set in June when you approve the budget. But until it is finally communicated in writing to the auditor, it's not set, and that's in August.
I just want to make sure, because last year that was something that was discussed, and we did get more, and then we did not do what we were going to do, did we, Sarah? I know you did. And then we never know when somebody in Columbia might find $3 billion sitting around and decide to give it to us.
It's not really been a frequent occurrence, but I guess there's always hope that that might occur.
They can lose it, they can find it. So, thank you, that's all.
Right, thank you very much. I don't have any other board members that have comments or questions. So there is a motion on the floor to approve the budget.
Madam Chairman, I request a roll call.
Roll call has been requested.
Bill and Ricky.
Mrs. Brett? I vote no. Mr. Cochran?
No.
Ms. Doolin?
No.
Ms. Goodwin Caldwell?
Yes.
Ms. Levinas Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Middleton?
Yes.
Ms. Morrison Fair?
Overwhelmingly, yes.
Ms. Mosley?
Yes.
Dr. Presley?
Yes.
Mr. Sailors?
Yes.
Dr. Stiles?
Yes.
Ms. Bush?
Yes.
9-3. 9-3.
Motion passes.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion on the floor to adjourn and several seconds. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for participating tonight. Thank you. Whether you're happy or not.
Most of the people
I know. That turned out wonderful to have all those.